Hello. So, anyone that watched last week, you'll realise or remember we didn't manage to go live on Facebook. I've just clicked go live and it didn't work on Facebook. So I have no idea what the hell's going on. Maybe it's because it's I planned the stream a long time ago and for some reason it's just not working. So I'm just going to quickly share something over onto all the other groups to let everybody know that for some reason it's not working and to find us on YouTube. I have no idea what's going on. Anyway, let's see who's actually made it in the chat. Chris, it's always here. Hi, Chris. See, Chris knew in advance. Just go to YouTube. What the bloody hell's going on? Hi, Lorraine. Who else is here? Oh, there's one more comment. I know Paul's here. Yeah, I don't know what the bloody hell's going on. I'll just have to post the video over to you, Facebook afterwards. No idea. Always something goes. I was literally saying to Paul before we went live, something always goes bloody wrong. So there we go. The something that goes wrong went wrong. At least, hopefully, that'll mean it'll go a bit better from here on in. Hopefully. Jesus. So just making sure everyone kind of gets the message that you'll have to come find us on YouTube. Hopefully, we'll have a few more trickling then. Oh dear. So. Where are we? So yeah, tonight, obviously, save me sitting around waiting for people to come in. Most people probably aren't going to find us now. Tonight, we have a guest. Oh, before I get into that, you will also notice Stu's not with me tonight, so I'm doing this one on my Todd. So yeah, tonight, I'm honoured to have Paul Sinclair as our guest. Paul's a well-known researcher, investigator, author, jack of all trades. He spent many years investigating unusual, unexplained phenomena. He's written several books, including the Truth Proof series and The Night People. So we're going to dive into Paul's research, explore his findings, figure out what he knows, and generally get to the bottom of what Paul does with his time. So I'll bring him in. Everyone, welcome, Paul Sinclair.
Thank you very much, Nath. Good to be here, and I'm sure after a few technical hiccups, and we know all about them on Truth Proof, so don't worry about it. We'll get there.
Yeah,
and people can listen to this after who aren't here tonight, can't they? So it's all good.
I'll make sure I post the videos. Or at least
no, it's all good. And I see Chris is in from Outer Limits. I don't know who Ruby Hilson is, but hi, Ruby. Hi, Lorraine, Chris James, and let's hope we get a few more in. Do you need questions, Nath, as well, or have you got everything lined up to fire at me?
I've got everything lined up.
All good.
If we get any questions in the comments, I'll try and go through them. But I've usually got so many questions myself, I'll just fire them at you. And
excellent. It's all good. Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Obvious first question. Who are you? What do you do? Tell us a bit about yourself and Truth Proof.
What do I do? Well, what I did from leaving school is work with my hands as a joiner. So for the best part of all my life, well, up to age of 48, I sort of packed in. I'd seen too much. I know we're talking paranormal guys here, but you've asked me. So I'd seen too many people within the building trade who were absolutely worn out by the time they get to 55, 60. And I just got myself into a position where I didn't have to do that. And I packed it all in and do this full time now. Full time investigation of the unexplained. I don't want to say paranormal researcher or pigeonhole myself into any one bracket, Nath, because I think enough people have heard me talk about this subject and know what my views are on its multi-phenomena. You know, so let's not just say UFO researcher, cryptid researcher. I don't want to be labelled as any one of them. If you've got guests on in future or past that do, then that's great, but it's not me. I think because ultimately what we're dealing with is all linked, my opinion.
Yeah.
So that's what I do pretty much all the time. Well, I'm fitting 4 daughters, grandchildren. You know, I'm 60 now. So everything's got a limited shelf life, Nath. That's why I've stopped writing the books. I'm out everywhere. I'm all over the place. 20 past 4 of the morning on them cliff tops. And hopefully I could do it for another 10 years. But you don't know what's around the corner. So I'm at most of every day up at 5 o'clock. With some people in my position, maybe could get up at 10 o'clock. I'm up at 5 o'clock and I'm here. I'm sort of doing what I do. So, looking forward to speaking to you and just having a go answering out you've got to ask me.
Cool. But yeah, I think we've, like you said, we have interviewed lots of people that just focus on UFOs. We've interviewed people that just focus on the paranormal or psychics and things like that. And we always like to ask the questions of: do you think these things are linked? Do you think there's a scientific link between paranormal, UFOs, cryptids? Some of them, like myself, will dive into there must be, and others that take a kind of a more skeptical approach.
Do you mean there must be a scientific link, and the skeptical approach would be what? I know I'm asking you that now, but
Yeah, I wouldn't even know what.
I'd have thought that the skeptical approach would probably be there's got to be some kind of scientific explanation, and I think what we're dealing with is something that science does not understand.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that at some point within our advancement we won't start to understand it. So let's not rule science out. Science, just because science doesn't have an answer for this stuff now, does not mean it won't at some stage later down the road. But it's still going to appear like magic. It's still a mystical thing because through the ages, we're going back decades and decades, hundreds and hundreds of years. Nothing's changed in what's presenting. The descriptive terms have changed because we've changed, and look at the world now to what it was 50 years ago. Do you know? So the descriptions have changed, but the actual substance, the actual physical items that people are seeing, if we can call them physical, in some instances they're not. They're the same. People are interested in ghosts. I don't think they'll have looked any different to what a ghost looks today. Apart from now, we see them dressed in more modern clothing. Why is that? I can never get my head around that one. Why the ghost would present in clothing? Surely if it's the essence of a person, I don't know. I haven't got all answers for what we're looking at here, Nathan, but I think the best thing we can do is just turn them all over in his heads and see if we can throw them in.
I asked the question on one of the live streams last year: why aren't there any naked ghosts? Why have they all got clothes? How does that work? Like, because I personally, my opinion is that all of these things are legitimate phenomena, but I want to know. I want to fill in those blanks between science and pseudoscience. I hate that term, but I want to know what the science is, because I was interested in science before I was interested in the paranormal, UFOs, all that stuff, and I was under the skeptical. Oh, it must just be a misunderstanding, a misinterpretation. These people aren't very clever. They obviously don't know. And then the more I looked into it, I was like, hang on, there's some ridiculously intelligent people that still can't solve these problems.
Yeah.
There must be more to it than just misidentification.
Without a doubt. I mean, I'd agree. And the question, what you sort of posed, I don't know, months and months ago, why do we not see naked ghosts? It's a great question, because you see me just skirting around it 2 minutes ago, thinking, why have they all got clothes on? What is spiritual about clothing? And there may be somebody listening to this afterwards who can tell us, and that we know we'll get the answer, as in that is the way they would have wanted to present in life, so that is what they're showing you. And I'm not in a position to say they're wrong or they're right, but there's make no doubt about it. People do see ghosts, and they present how they would have looked in life in many instances, which is a strange one. But as regards the ghosts, the cryptids, the UFOs, I said to Andrew Collins, Andrew's been up onto cliff tops with us quite a few times, and I know he liked it. He likes to use it now. I said, what if we're dealing with a hive mind? What if it's an all-encompassing one intelligence that can be all things? So if you're interested in nuts and bolts UFOs, that's what it's going to present as. I'm not saying that's what's happening, but it would make a little bit of sense when we say that we think they're all linked ultimately, because it would be by the one, and I don't mean this literally, the one Godhead, the one sort of intelligence that is throwing this out.
Yeah, and I think that's what's going to help us get to the bottom of the science, is ask it. It might sound like a stupid question: why aren't there any naked ghosts? But asking questions like that can help fill in those blanks, because there has to be. We don't see ghosts of just clothes. So clothes don't have spirits. So why do spirits have clothes?
Yeah,
There has to be an explanation for that. So that will help us fill in those
well,
blanks.
as you know, somebody's going to listen to this afterwards,
Mm.
and I don't mean they'll not be doing what you're doing, and you're kicking the ideas around, and I'm kicking the ideas around. They'll categorically tell you why, and tell you why you're wrong and why I'm wrong, and I just switch off from that, because invariably they don't really know. They've just got an opinion, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good point, and in answer to it, I don't know. I mean, so one person's shadow being could be another person's ghost, depending on where you kind of lean in within the genre of unexplained phenomena, you know. And the light form phenomena are the structured craft and objects behind these lights. I don't know. I've always had the feeling that what we've observed on the East Yorkshire wolds and in the forests of North Yorkshire and out at sea over the cliffs, the spheres in particular, I termed them ILFs. Back in 2002, I had a website called ILF UFO, which literally meant intelligent light forms, because I believe there's an awareness to the light. And after speaking to so many people, I use rock anglers quite a lot to explain these things, because they're studying these lonely places at all hours of the day and night, you know, because the tide dictates when they fish, and they're seeing these lights. And some of them, there's one in particular, is up there. It were early evening during the winter, but so star-filled night, November, and it'll relate to what we're talking about in a minute. And he's sort of observing the stars, fishing on the sheer 300 to 400 foot cliff faces up at Bempton and Speeton, and observes a star out in the heavens, a bright one that he doesn't recognize. And he's sort of watching it, and then instantly he feels like there's a connection, and it's obviously never been a star, and it's above him. And I don't mean it's 3 foot above him, but it's above him. He said the ground's lit up like, I says, it's just like a welder's torch. I can look at the blades of grass, they look like silver, and instantly it's gone. And I think that we're looking at some kind of intermind connection in some instances. Whether I'm right or not, I don't know. But spoke to quite a few who've had similar experiences to what that rock angler have had. So as though this, I don't know whether it's a visual thing. I don't know how these things connect to the human psyche. I don't know how that happens. Obviously, I don't. But there's some connection. We all do it. We do it in everyday life, don't we? You can walk in a bar, and if you stare at somebody, I don't see every time, but sometimes you turn around, you get the feeling that you're being looked at. Maybe it's just an advanced, hyper kind of mode of what I'm talking about there, because you know when you're being looked at. You know when somebody doesn't like you. You know, do you know what I mean? And you just get that feeling. Words don't have to be spoken. Yeah,
people put it down to like a vibe, which they're giving off a bad vibe, which is just vibration, which is how everything. That's how energy works. That's how everything works. Another link that I don't think a lot of people have put together is a lot of psychics and people into the paranormal side claim to be clairaudient, which is where you can hear spirits, which basically just communicating what would seem, if it was a UFO sighting or an abduction, that you were being communicated with telepathically.
Yeah.
They're the same thing, hearing voices in your head of what you can see in front of you. So, that's the same thing.
So once again, Nathan, you're absolutely spot on. And if we'd got the medium and the spiritualists, that's what they'd be hearing. The UFO alien abduction experiencer, interested party, would claim that they're being the mind speak, the cryptid peak type phenomena. If you were out in a forest or out in the open, you'd be thinking these things are talking to me.
Yeah.
But is it this all-encompassing intelligence that's doing this? It's great things to kick around.
Definitely.
What are your views?
I've always, I've always had the scientific background, so I don't like anything that sounds a bit too magic-y. I try and move away from. And not necessarily that it doesn't exist, but that there has to be, if it's a legitimate thing that happens, there's going to be a scientific explanation, because science explains the universe and everything in it. So I've swapped theories about 6 or 7 times over the last 10 years. Every time I hear a better theory that makes more sense, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go with that, and I'm gonna run with it and see where it goes. I'm currently on when I first heard it sounded too sci-fi for me, the different dimension, until I looked into the actual, the science of what dimensions are, and that we can only, again, frequencies, we can only see and hear certain frequencies. Light works in certain frequencies, sound works in different frequencies. If there's something, so there could be something standing next to me right now that just vibrates at a certain frequency, that means we can't see it,
yeah,
we can't hear it, or it could be physically standing there but able to move through an extra dimension so we can't see it, which would explain how UFOs can sometimes just materialize in front of you.
Yes, that's so true, and I know there's a lot of people sort of want to lean towards the thought that these things are traveling across the vast distances of the solar system, and then you'll get the ardent skeptical, so they can't possibly travel those light years and they can't be here. And I'm in no position to argue with that, but the fact remains that people I reckon every day of the week of every year, somewhere in the world will see what people claim to be UFOs, UAPs, and they'll be claiming to see these things. Now, if they're not traveling these vast distances because it's an impossibility, then they've got to be coming by some other method, because they're already here. Do you know, on November the 14th, 2019, I was on the cliff tops at Bempton. It's bound to figure a lot in what I talk about, probably tonight even, because I'm always there.
Yeah.
And I've got a guy called Lee Hayward with me. And I've set cameras up, looking towards the sea. Not necessarily going to film anything. Just before I get into this, we can go up there, Nathan, for 6 months and see nothing. You can go up for a year and see nothing. The people that go up there and first night and they see things, and then next time they go to see things, invariably they're probably looking at shooting stars, or they've just got a little bit of an overactive imagination. It happens, doesn't it? But we're up there all the time. So anyway, set the cameras up. It's November the 14th, 2019. They're facing the sea, and I'm talking to Lee. We've already seen what we've called the light forms. He'd come with a very academic head on him, scientifically thinking, and he knew exactly what aircraft were in the sky. He could tell you what boats were out at sea. He'd got it all weighed up because he wanted to tell me what I was seeing, and he wanted to explain it for me. And he was certain there's a perfectly sane earthly explanation for what you're seeing, but I don't mind that. And Lee comes across and doesn't say it in any condescending manner, so I'm good for that. Anybody can come up with me and do that. So we'd seen him. He says, "What do they look like, Paul?" This is as we're driving up Cliff Lane, and it's crazy. I looked and it's dark. I said, "Like that," when an orange sphere lit up in the sky.
Wow.
And this guy, Lee, we might get to listen to this. No interest in UFOs or anything. Just literally hasn't. He's just a friend. And he said, "I want to try and solve what's happening for you here, Paul." Anybody look him up on Facebook and ask the question. Ask Lee, you'll not be going behind my back. If anybody's so minded and they want to do it. And he said like that. So he said even then, as soon as I looked at it, I thought, I don't know what that is, because it literally just kind of appeared into existence. A few seconds later, it's imploded and gone. That's the only thing I can say that they're doing, Nath. They're not flying from anywhere. So during the course of that night, we saw him 4 or 5 times, and he's writing down all the times he's seen them. And I'm setting these cameras up. I haven't got the funds to leave. They're good cameras, a couple of grand cameras, but I can't leave them just on cliff tops. A lot of moisture, you have to cover them. Yeah. So you can't catch them. They'll appear 1, 2, 3. There'll be 3 in a row. Get the camera on, they've gone. So I'm waiting. We're in anticipation. And I just turn around to speak to him, and in the field with us, Lee estimates it we're about 80 yards away. There's a sphere of orange light just off the ground. The Lee's exact words were, the influence that the light was giving off was about the size of a Volkswagen Beetle.
Wow.
And we're looking at this thing, and I'm pulling the camera around, saying a few choice words. And as I've got the camera on, this thing's just, and it's gone. And it looked like lava. That's how he explained it. I mean, for the documentary that we've been working on, myself and Les Drake, we've not just, although it's cryptid related primarily, I say we, Les has just been filming. He's not really as interested in, he's interested now, but when he started, he were interested in making the documentary. I knew there were a link to this, even if I don't understand how. So we've included the light form reports, because the 14th of, I'm just going to say this date again, the 14th of November 19, a few years later, during lockdown, myself and Bob Brown are on the cliff tops, sat trying to film these lights once again, and a guy walks down onto the cliffs with his dog, speaking to us. It's it's late evening, it's not quite dark, after tea and what have you, and he asked if we were filming the seabirds. And we just kind of nodded. I'm not going to say, oh no, we're after filming UFOs and things, because invariably you're going to just get raised eyebrows and that were that. But when he came back, it were dark, and we're still there with cameras, so he knew we weren't.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say we're mega interested, but he were kind of interested. He says, well, you're not obviously filming seabirds, lads. What are you up to? So I told him. He told us he lived a few miles further down the coast at a place called Reeton. And he'd lived there, I don't know, God knows how many years, got windows that looked out onto the sea, never seen anything. Fair enough. He's just about to leave, and Bob Brown, who were with me, said, what about unusual animals? Have you ever seen anything unusual? He goes, well, what do you mean? So for us, the staple explanation would be the big cats, because I think, they make the newspapers, don't they? They sometimes get on the news, and I think everybody within the UK can accept that these things are probably at large. Yeah. Even if they are escapees or released animals from, these won't be alive from 1976 Wildlife Act. However, because average life expectancy is about 17 years for a big cat. But let's assume they're bred. So anyway, he just instantly told his dog to sit down. And then he told us this incredible story about walking on the beach at Reeton to the next beach, which is Speeton, which is about 1.5 miles from where we were. And his dog, he explained that this dog was clever, this pointer dog, he said, and it stands in a different stance if it sees a rabbit to when it sees a pheasant. He's going into all these little details. He said, and he's looking at someone, and I can't work out why he's stood like this and why he looks so different. And I get my binoculars and I look up, he says, and there's a full moon. Now, please don't think that I'm trying to link a full moon to the cryptids, because I'm not. But he said there's a full moon. And he said, I'm looking. He says, and I can see something that I think's a donkey or like a billy goat or something up on hill, halfway up hillside. He said, and it stood up on 2 legs. He said, and it takes loads for people to get their head around this. It's the subject I never thought I'd be interested in. He said, have you ever seen the werewolf from Harry Potter? And me and Bob just looked at each other, because we've had about 6 reports of this from Flixton and all around the area. Some of them go back a long time, but we've had them recent. So we kind of said, we know what we knew you were going to say that. He said, and it looked, he said, I could see it in silhouette at moon. Once again, people, don't think I'm painting a picture of a werewolf in backlight of a moon. He's just lighting it up. He said, and it just turned and ran over the cliff tops. Now, Nathan, there's no way that some huge bipedal fur-covered creature could survive and remain unseen on those cliff tops. So either that guy's telling a lie, or everybody else who's come forward are lying, and I don't think they are, or these things are coming from somewhere else. Yeah. And it's the other, it's the unknown other. That's what interests me. We've got, sorry if you want to ask anything.
That's all right.
No, we've got we've got stories up there. And I don't just mean one, of people encountering luminous spheres of light, like almost mushroom shaped, that cross the path along the cliff tops, and they go out to sea. You can see a definite shape that goes out to sea, and within the light they can see all lights. It's a blue color, lights kind of exploding inside it and punching the blue out of the blue, but no noise. What are these things? What would happen if somebody walked through one or encountered one too close? Do you know? I mean,
Yeah.
I've got 3 reports of this. One by a guy called David Ellis in Bempton, and a guy called Peter, who I won't say his surname, who saw it on the old RAF base. And it's I don't know. It's fascinating. It's multifaceted because every type of unexplained phenomena imaginable is presenting. I wouldn't say there, but in and around that area, up into the forests of North Yorkshire. And these people that are telling me this, just like you were talking about earlier, that are of all different intellects. And I don't mean because you might be scientifically trained, you're somehow far more intelligent than a skillful carpenter, or do you know what I mean?
It's a different kind of intelligence.
Yeah, but they're all and but they've got one thing in common: they're all observing and describing something very similar. And what I find fascinating on top of that are that the stories of folklore back these new accounts, the stories of the present, up. And I don't think it's because people are sort of embellishing it because, there's a story of some fantastic beast in this location. Because in a lot of instances, people won't know. You know what I mean? They're not going to delve deep into folklore. You know, we've looked into Flixton and Flixton, North Yorkshire, and because our documentary Wolfland starts in Flixton, and you've probably got the earliest accounts of werewolfery, should we say, a history of werewolfery, we'll call it, than anywhere in the world. It goes back. If we want to link it to 937 AD, that's how far back it goes, to the King Athelstan. He doesn't talk of werewolves, but he talks about building a refuge to protect travellers from an infestation of wolves and savage beasts. Now, the wolf would have been the only creature that was a threat to man in 937 AD. The bears had gone. So what were the savage beasts? Because we've got these weird stories.
Yeah.
You know, it's a strange one, and I can't even believe at 60-year-old I find myself getting really excited. Probably not even the wrong word when I get these reports, because there's something to it. And if we're only writing the first truth proof book, it were going to be about UFOs, spheres of light, if not they're one and the same. You know, poltergeist activity, just stories of the unexplained. I've got a few stories from Flixton. And when I went and did a bit of digging, I got more. And then when people find out you're interested and you start talking on podcasts, the people who've had the experiences are looking at podcasts like this, like the ones in America, you know, Sasquatch Chronicles and all the others. They're looking to find answers to their puzzle. And they might come across this English guy who's actually actively looking at these things and not believing everything everybody tells them, and they contact you, and it's just, I'm overwhelmed with it, to be honest, Nath. You know, but there you go.
I think I mentioned it to it might have been Malcolm Robinson when I spoke to him last year, how so many people don't believe in the paranormal, or they don't believe in UFOs or cryptids, yet everyone, or at least someone that everybody knows, has a story of something they saw that they can't explain, whether it be lights in the sky, a strange creature, a ghost, or some weird activity in their house. Someone has seen something weird everywhere.
Yeah.
And not just now, going back centuries, maybe even thousands of years into history, there are stories of weird beasts and ghosts and lights in the sky that shouldn't be there. It's obviously, like you said, it's obviously not a new thing. And I think I've kind of working on my own little project at the moment and kind of researching like cryptids across the UK in history and whatever. And I think it was the Black Cat Society or something that kind of tracks the amount of black cat sightings across the UK. And I think it was 2004 to 2005, there was over 300 black cat sightings across the UK in 1 year.
Yeah.
So if there aren't any black cats in the UK, what did all those people see?
Yeah, you're so right. We had one at Boynton only a few months ago, which is a few miles from where I live now, and I went. It had been snowing, so I just took advantage and went out to just seeing if I could find any prints or anything, and I found nothing. But 1994 were prolific for cat sightings around this area, but we get them every year. But why are they so elusive? Why are they not being seen? You know, like you and there's, I believe they're here, and I think they're flesh and blood, and I think that the vast majority are managing to find cover and hide themselves. I know for a fact, after speaking to people in North Yorkshire, in the forests, particularly around Harwood Dale, that there's a breeding pair of black cats up there. But then you get the strange one where, and the archives of the local newspapers will throw this up. There's a lane called Short Lane in between Bridlington and Bempton. It's about a mile long. And it's just a single track with a few pull-ins, and you've got no hedgerow whatsoever, and you've got fields at one side and fields at other. There's nothing. There's black cat sightings on Short Lane over decades and decades, which is, and we've got UFO sightings on Short Lane. You know, there were a guy there, I think it was 2006. He'd got his first car, young lad, about 18 years old, and he'd been into Bridlington with a few friends, probably just, I think we've all done it. He's got his car, wants to play his music, and he's just driving around, just doing his thing, you know. And they decided to come back. I don't think they'd been drinking alcohol or anything. They lived in Bempton, and they decided to come back up Bempton Lane and cut across Short Lane. And I went to this farm to ask if because there'd been a black cat sighting, and I went to ask the farmer if he'd got any knowledge of it, probably in 2014, and I got this story. That's how it happened. I actually went asking about a cat sighting, and he went on to tell me. He said, "We're driving along Short Lane. Obviously, it's late." He said, "All apart from nightclubs or whatever, pubs had closed." He says, "And we're just driving along it." He said, "And something just flashed past the car." He says, he described it, it's like a wasp. He says, I think it was yellow, gold, and blue. He said, and we stopped cars, a few words maybe, what they flipping X that?
Yeah.
You know, he said, and we're looking. He said, and the next thing, it comes straight past, stops, and then it just starts to lower. He said, and there's just revolving gold and blue panels. It's sort of, I don't know what shape, would not quite cone shaped.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's narrower at the top. He said, and these panels are going, just turning all the way around it. He says, and we're absolutely amazed and frightened. He said, and just before it touched the road, it shot off. He says, and I just floored car. And that's just one story, but it's Short Lane. You know, you've got another one from the archive that this particular lane threw up. And it over a period of, I don't know, probably 3 weeks, because it were in 3 consecutive papers, and it's out weekly, the Bridlington Free Press. We'd got Hunt for the Deer Butcherers. Then we'd got another, I can't remember other titles, but every week. And they were finding on Short Lane deer carcasses. And they found them at Waldgate as well, which isn't far away. So obviously that everybody does it. We've got to find a rational explanation, and there's been some poaching. But unfortunately, the meat hadn't been taken. It had been pared off the bone in an unusual manner. And well, I got to speak to a police officer who witnessed it as well. And it sounded like, I don't even know, it sounded like some strange animal death. And I'm saying death because we refrain from using that word on our podcast because we got a strike for it. So I don't want you to get it's crazy. But there you go. So yes, I mean, the cats are here without a doubt. But, but is there something else allowing some of these things to come through? I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's.
And I saw Terry Brown offer a question up earlier. But if you've got a question, I've wrote it down.
Yeah,
so
I'll go back through the questions. I was just going to add that I think quite a few other people have the same similar explanation for things, even really famous things like the Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah.
They did DNA testing in the loch. There's nothing there.
No.
And yet people see things. What are they seeing if it's not really there? Is it something that it is there, but not on the same physical plane kind of thing?
It could be like some kind of. We're looking at some kind of tracing, some kind of remnant, almost a ghost of a what would the word be? We're looking at a replay of the past. You know, I don't know.
I think again we've touched on a few times that because everyone likes to use, lots of people like to use the term dimensions, but if there was another physical dimension, that doesn't just mean that there could be things that we can't see or can't explain. In the scientific mind at the moment, there's 4 dimensions, 3 physical and 1 is time and space. But if there's an extra physical dimension, that means that time and space is then the 5th dimension, meaning our understanding of time is completely wrong. So these things might not necessarily be ghosts or cryptids or UFOs. It could just be things from the future or things from the past just happening in exactly the same physical space that we're in, and we're seeing it, which is why it goes in and out. So there could still be beings from some other place in the universe, or it could be what we use to fly around. We could be seeing the not even the ghost. We could be seeing an actual dinosaur living in Loch Ness.
Yeah,
it's not some mythical creature that survived. It's still living 65 million years ago. But we just get a glimpse of it every now and again.
And I could go with that, and it sounds plausible, doesn't it? You know, to think on those lines. And I've not really looked into Loch Ness, but I've been contacted by a guy who's got a lot of knowledge of Loch Ness and had a property on Loch Ness for 45 years, a salmon fisherman who'd never seen the Loch Ness monster, if you call it a monster. They call these things monsters just to add some kind of exciting element to them, and they're probably not monsters, even if we saw them. You know, it sounds like it's got quite a little head from whatever it's been seen. I don't know, it's got a head full of teeth. But look, his property looks down onto the loch, paving his drive one hot summer's day, and looks down onto the loch and sees what he thought were an upturned boat and a head sticking out of the water. He said, and this guy observed it not just for 2 or 3 minutes, but they observed it for 30 minutes. And apparently it's common knowledge up there that people do see them, and they don't want Joe Public, although they're going to get it anyway. I mean, it's a bit too late for that, isn't it? But
just a bit.
Just swarming round. But I don't know. It's all an interesting concept, what you've just said.
Yeah. I think, again, it's all just my brain trying to find something that makes more sense than a dinosaur has somehow survived.
It's not survived. I think we know that, don't we?
65 million years.
Yeah, I think we know that. And why shouldn't your explanation and your thoughts on this be? Why shouldn't they be just as important as mine or anybody else's? Because you know, at the end of the day, we're all just sort of feeling round in dark here, trying to make sense of what we're looking at. Yeah,
and I think there's there's a really interesting place not far from me called Cannock Chase.
Okay.
It has everything that you could think of. There's the pig man, there's the werewolf, there's the ghosts of World War II soldiers, there's UFO sightings, there's everything you could think of. It's got, there's black-eyed children, there's everything. So we did a Skywatch there last year with Dave from the Bufog. We did this massive Skywatch. Didn't tell him where we were going. I said, Cannock Chase, we'll meet at this field. Here's the postcode. And when we got there, I told him all the sites, because he's terrified of anything other than UFOs. Terrified of ghosts, terrified of cryptid. Didn't tell him that all of these things had been spotted up right where we were standing until we were there. So he's sitting there shaking every noise he hears. But there were sightings of World War II soldiers walking down the street. People have driven past them and come back to kind of offer them a lift, and there's nobody there.
No.
There's strange cryptids and UFO sightings and all sorts. And it doesn't make sense that one space would have so many things if they're not related. Like if there's a field that a black cat lives in, there's going to be a lot of black cat sightings. But why would that field then get lots of UFO sightings unless the UFOs are interested in the black cats for some reason?
So you're right. And I find myself saying it like a broken record, but location is key. The location is the key, probably. You know, I mean, it don't make sense that people are seeing something that what you describe as a werewolf in a place where it couldn't possibly forge some kind of existence. Yet people are seeing it there. So what is the common denominator? Yet people are seeing UFOs there. People see big cats there. So, but the one thing that's the common denominator is the location. There's some kind of thin area there. I mean, we've got that negative magnetic anomaly up there as well. And it's about 10 miles out to sea, but extends up the coast. And is it uncanny that a lot of aircraft have gone down around the area of the anomaly? Is it uncanny that, or coincidence that, and I'm not saying that this is UFO related, that June 15th, 1998, a tornado 723, vanished from radar 15 miles off Ed, Bedmonton and Flamborough. Went down in mysterious circumstances. I weren't investigating it at the time, but the UFO investigators of the day actively pursued this as a UFO related event. I don't know whether it was. Tell you what I did find though, June, July, a few weeks after it had gone down, Coast Guard were out about 6 miles away searching for a large black object that fishermen had seen land on surface at water. Suitcases don't fall out of planes. This was as big as a car, and it were on surface at water. It were important enough that the trawlermen, not rock anglers, had reported it to Coast Guard, and lifeboats were sent out to investigate. Interesting that it were at the same time, and that were 1998. June the 15th, though, that aircraft went down. June the 15th, 2020, in a similar area, F-15 Sea Eagle went down. 1972, June, I think the 14th, Buccaneer went down. And I've got more. I just don't have that information in front of me. But June the 11th, 2011, I could get it wrong here, people. So somebody's got one of my books and they said, he said 2011, it were 10. I do apologise. All the wallabies, the little kangaroos at Sobiol Zoo, got decapitated. Now you think, that's some sick individual. Have you ever tried to catch one of them? I haven't, but I've tried to catch a sheep with farmer, and they'll be fast. But what makes it even more interesting, Nath, is that in that year when those wallabies got decapitated, and wallabies got decapitated all over the United Kingdom, and then when you look further and you go to Australia onto Emerald Coast, and you go to Coffs Coast, wallabies were getting decapitated. You know, so I find that fascinating that were happening. I mean, I sent information to a professor at Warwick University who were interested in cats. We spoke about the big cats and the potential that they were here, and I sent him that. And his explanation was that it was some internet craze, and it had caught on, and that people, which is even more implausible in my head. This being some kind of otherworldly intelligence responsible for this for reasons that we don't know. I mean, the unfortunate wallabies, they never found their heads.
I mean, but there was the internet craze where people were like, eating Tide Pods and things. I can't imagine teenagers on the internet like, oh no, what's fun? Let's decapitate a wallaby. Like that's a really specific thing, isn't it?
It's not just that though, and most of them are Bennett's wallabies for some reason, and they're the biggest ones because of in Australia a fox were blamed, but they only did it in 2011. So suddenly the foxes decided it weren't worth doing before that. It's not worth doing after that, and the foxes were blamed in the UK, not a fox, foxes. All over UK, Anwell Bunny Park, Cotswolds, they were this unfortunate, horrendous thing were happening to these unfortunate animals. But when one escapes in UK, they rarely ever catch them because they're so fast. So the chances of these things being these acts being done by men. Or
foxes. I couldn't imagine foxes. A fox catching one.
Well, I spent hours with zookeeper at Sowerby Zoo. This is where it were happening, which is literally 3 miles from where I'm sat. Just a small animal zoo. And he said, he told me, he said that we had one went first. He said, and that was the 15th, on the 15th of June. One went first. He says, and then during the course of the week, the others got done. He says, even though the newspaper said they were all done. He said there were one at first. But my point is, he said, but this is how we got onto the Bennett's wallabies. He said, but these are Bennett's wallabies. He says, these are the biggest. He said, have you ever tried to catch one? Well, obviously, I haven't. He says, well, we have. He says, and you can grab hold of a Bennett's wallaby. He says, if you've got overalls on, and you grab it, I don't know, for whatever reason, you might want to inject it with something or antibiotics, I don't know. He said, but if that kicks out, he says, it will absolutely tear through your overalls. He said, they're a big thing. I said, a fox couldn't take one of them animals down. So interesting. I don't think you thought you were going to talk about wallabies tonight, did you?
No, definitely not. But even
1 sec,
even the tiniest percent of is it physically possible that these were all foxes? The fact that, like you touched on, they didn't do it before, they didn't do it after, and it wasn't just so if it was just in the UK, perhaps there was a sudden shortage of food in the areas that just also happen to have wallabies. But how did all the foxes make the same decision and all around the world to just decapitate not pick apart an injured one in a zoo somewhere or go for the smallest, youngest one?
Just to decapitate.
It wouldn't make sense.
And they were
how would they be able to communicate that across all foxes across the world? Like, right, lads, today's the day we kill the wallabies. Like, it doesn't make sense.
And obviously, we know we're talking about this, and we know we're not going to find an answer to the biggest question is 3 letters, the mighty why. You know, we're not going to find an answer as to why, but it points to something highly unusual taking place, in my opinion. They were whatever took them weren't consuming them for food either. You know, and so I find it absolutely fascinating that. I mean, I didn't think when I found that article in the Bridlington Free Press and then started doing a bit of research and going to speak to zookeeper, and then I contacted most zoos in the United Kingdom. You know, I mean, that's part of, you couldn't do this if I were working 8 till 5 knocking nails in wood, because over the period of that bit of research, I contacted most of the zoos in the United Kingdom, and I didn't say anything about otherworldly intelligences and UFOs or anything. I just explained what I were looking into and did they know this, and built the picture up, as I did with a lot of the animal parks in Australia. You know, and I did the same there. But, you know, they were a lot more sarcastic in their newspapers because obviously a fox had been blamed. But they describe the horrific injury to what they'd found. And it said that we're looking for a fox that can wield a samurai blade. Do you know? Because it was obviously just a clean cut. So I don't know whether you want to move on from that. Been a bit graphic there, people, so I do apologise.
But yeah, before we move on too much, I did want to just mention one of the sightings that I've sort of investigated that the missus had last year. She was staying at her sister's, and it sounded very, very similar to something that we've touched on already. I'll never forgive her for what she did. She saw these lights in the sky, and she tried to video call me, and I had no signal. Instead of filming it, I was like, next time, film it. Don't call me, for God's sake. So she had a phone in her hand, still didn't think to film it. But she was staying in High Wycombe for the night at her sister's. She'd gone outside to smoke before she went to bed and looked out over the hills and the fields in the distance. And she was like, what's these lights over here? I think because it was the first time she'd been there. It could have been a crane or anything in the distance. So she asked the sister to come and have a look. She was like, don't know, never seen them before. And it was obviously there's 3 of them, so it's in a triangle formation of orange spheres in the sky. So they moved all in sync, and then they lined up in a line, and then they started doing all this crazy stuff around the sky, and then they just darted off in different directions. And she was like, what the was that? Like, I can't explain any of that. And the whole time she's trying to call me, I'm like, just film it next time. But again, like there's sightings of orange balls of light up and down the UK for the however many years you want to go back. It's strange.
Yeah, and it's nothing unique to area where I'm looking in. You're absolutely spot on. And I mean, I think probably I've highlighted this area simply because of doing so much work on it. So I've got so many reports. But I think, just like you've described, Nath, there, that there'll be other locations, and that could be one of them, where if you'd got a researcher or enough eyes looking at that location, you're going to find more and more reports. You know, we talk about these. I've just said location is key, but there's probably a lot more locations all around the UK, all around the world, that are just as prolific, but they just don't have somebody. 4:20 in the morning, I were up there, you know, other week, with Bob Brown, and who's going to do that? You know, who's going to do that? I mean, it's remote. We're talking about there's no street lights. Your next stop is North Sea. The start 200 to 400 foot. The cliffs area we were on were about 300 foot, and the sheer. You don't. And behind you've got farmland, and you're travelling up a mile single track road to get to where you want to go, and then you've got to park your car, and you're walking then for a mile at least to some vantage point. So who's going to do it? So I often get well, we live in Bempton and we never see out, or we live well, you're not going to do, are you? But not when you've shut your curtains on your night, you've put Emmerdale Farm on, and you sat watching your TV. You're not going to see these things. You've got to be sort of in the zone. You know, what my little.
But when you're on your way to work and you're standing at the bus stop staring at your phone,
which is what everybody does, isn't it? Yeah, that's what they do. But and these things, you know, everything's so unexpected. Like you said, your wife or your partner, she never thought to film them, but who does?
Yeah.
Do you know, who does? We were up there a few weeks ago. We'd not had much luck, to be honest, for months and months. And we hit on something on 7th of February and 14th of February. And if anybody wants to go onto truthproof.uk website, you'll see some stills from moving footage of a red sphere above the hill. And what am I saying here? Yeah, but we'd been up there months and months, you know. But yeah, that's what I'm saying. I lost the thread then. When I saw this sphere lift off the ground, I looked at it and told Pete and Bob, I've just seen something unusual. And instead of just putting the camera on, we're waiting. So nobody's any different. We did get it on film. It did it again. But you don't think. We were at Flamborough once. I don't know if you'll probably not be familiar with area, but we were at North Landing, myself and Peter. Now, North Landing's about 450 foot wide and about 800 foot deep. It's a cove. About 3 or 4 fishing boats, cobbles they're called, shored up on North Landing, and we're overlooking the cove. And from the sea, with no visible light source to be seen, and there's nothing lit up at North Landing, the cove lit up. We were expecting Sea King, even though we couldn't see it, we were expecting Sea King helicopter to come round the corner. But it was silent, and we're just looking at it. It's a pretty flat sea, and we can't work it out. It's just like somebody's floodlit the cove. And instead of putting the camera on and film, it came on, and we're looking at it. You're thinking, and 5 to 10 seconds, and it switches off. I should have put the camera on afterwards, because it did it again. But you're never ready. It's always after the event that we kind of say, well, you know, we should have done that, or we should have done that. We were up at Staxton Wold, myself, a guy from Yorkshire UFO Society, Joe Dormer, and my good friend Steve Ashbridge. And Staxton Wold's the RAF base, radar base. It's the oldest operational radar base in the world. Not that means old, but I just throw it in there. So we were at the back of the radar base, and we've got a full 360. It's great views. It's 500 foot above sea level, and that's the highest point around. That's probably why radar base is there. Not before that, but long before that, it was a Roman hill fort. You know, so it's had habitation for a long time. So we're up there, and I'm looking towards a place called Driffield and Beeford. Driffield and another village called, I said Beeford, I didn't mean that, Wetwang. It's a real name, Wetwang. So it's about 6 miles in distance. I'm looking, and I've got a Sony VX2100 camcorder, which is kind of obsolete now, the little digital tapes, but it's great in low light. And they didn't see it, like a huge mushroom of turquoise light seemed to just come up from the ground like a bubble. And I told them to, and I couldn't believe it. Instead of putting the camera on, they saw it. It did it again. But Steve, Joe, and I, we observed, like, it must have been some Earth bound phenomena. I think something within the earth. I don't think it were anything from up there or any, but there were like electricity in it. It was the strangest thing, a beautiful coloured light. And me and Steve swore when we were driving on, because we dropped Joe off, that it's going to be in newspapers this tomorrow. People are going to be talking about this tomorrow, because it covered a huge area. But it was just like for the blink of an eye, and it had gone. Nobody ever said a word. Were we the only people ever to see it? It's crazy. But there you go.
Yeah, we did. As I said, we did our Skywatch last year, and so there's me and my loads of other people. Dave, obviously the lead investigator for Birmingham UFO Group.
Oh yeah.
On a paranormal investigation, walking around the war cemeteries at Cannock Chase, and I see this light in the sky. So I'm like, Dave, what's that? And it's kind of in the distance, and you can see it's moving, and it gets brighter and brighter and brighter, and we're like, what the hell is that? And we're watching this thing for a good 3 or 4 minutes. Neither of us get our phone out and think to film it. So it's getting closer and closer and closer, and then it turns slightly, and it's an aeroplane. It's been coming directly at us with the headlights.
And it does throw people.
We sat and watched an aeroplane for 5 minutes, but still, for the first 4 minutes, we didn't know it was an aeroplane, and neither of us thought, one, check a flight tracker, or two, get your phone out and film it. We just stood there watching it, waiting to see what it was. So literally, even if we won't do it, I can't imagine most other people are going to get that.
Yeah, there's so much misidentification. You're right. You know, Peter, who comes up there with us, I mean, he's really interested. Obviously, that's why he comes up with us. But he'll go, "What's that, Paul?" And you're like, "We'll have a look." And like you've just said, it could be an aircraft. And until it starts to turn, you don't see it blinking lights, or it might just be space station. We'll have to sort of check before we come out. You kind of know what's there, but to some people, it's alien visitation, and I don't mean it is to Pete, but that's what I'm saying. You know, it's alien visitation, and they'll not change that narrative, because they want it to be that so much. As I said, but we could probably go there for another 6 months, another year, see nothing. There's not loads happening, but there's 24 hours in a day, Nathan. You know, you can't be there all the time, and they're not just nighttime sightings. You know, we've got plenty of daylight sightings as well, and strange time slips as well out at sea. Trawlermen.
What we need an army of people to just go door to door and ask everybody, have you ever seen, with a tick list, have you ever seen a UFO? You ever seen a strange light? You ever seen a big cat? You ever seen a pig man? You ever seen a werewolf? You ever had a paranormal encounter? If so, what? Tell me everything, and then we'll catalogue it all together, figure out where it is, and then maybe we'll have some more of these locations that we know we need to go and investigate. But location, no one's got the time for that.
Well, it's finding the time, isn't it? But I'm at the moment, I'm absolutely, as somebody who's looking into these things full time, just about. I used to crave getting the reports. I still do. And you used to think, oh, you're never going to get enough. You know, people, somebody might message you or call you or get in touch, and 6 months later you might get another call, and then, or they're all enthusiastic, and you gather as much information as you can, and then suddenly they don't want to talk about it, and that's kind of thing happens. And you know, you've got to respect people, and that's I always do. And if they want to close down on it, I do. I don't pursue it, but at the moment, I'm just overwhelmed with reports and information that I've got a folder just full. And I'm trying to keep people, sweet's not the word. I'm trying to keep people in the loop at all times and pursue all this. But for one person to be doing it, it's hard work at the moment. Yeah.
So it's I knew we'd end up. I think I've asked one question technically, but
no worries.
That's why I like to write down some questions, because some of the guests, they're very one word to the point answers. So it's a very long 2-hour show if they're just one word answers, and it's like trying to get blood out of a stone. I prefer guests who ask, so what's your name? And they don't stop for 2 hours, because it makes my job a lot easier.
Well, you know, we do the Truth Proof podcast and live stream, and it's difficult. And I prepare loads of questions for people, and invariably I don't need them, because, you know, we had Mark Ollie on Thursday, and he were absolutely brilliant. And most of them are. But sorry, I've cut through your words.
But yeah, I prefer guests where we can have this to and fro. And I've got my list of questions. I only read the first one. We've got enough to kind of bounce off each other. But obviously, you've touched on how much research you've done and all the different things that you've looked into, and everyone else's cases that they've thrown at you. If you could, what would you say was the best encounter you've had, or the best encounter you've then investigated or researched for someone else?
If we were going to do the best encounter I've had, definitely my own from childhood. But it were no fun. Do you know what that? And that's what's put me on the road I'm on now. Seen some unusual things during childhood, and if you want to call them aliens, then fine. To me, I don't know what they were, and I don't know where they were from, and all I know is they could pretty modest, well, poor upbringing as regards my dad worked hard, didn't get an high wage. We lived in a council house in a little village called Old Dennerby. So it's an unassuming house, semi-detached house. Not the place where you'd expect these things to be happening. In a little village, so there's not a lot of built-up properties around you, and I've just got fields at the back and pasture in the town of Mexborough, but it didn't stop whatever it was interacting and coming, and they got into the bedroom on a night, and obviously they must be non-physical, but they've got this ability to become physical, because I saw them as a child. I mean, the first time I saw them, probably 4 or 5 years old, as you know, who's going to keep a diary? And I weren't sharpest tool in box when it came to school and stuff, so I wouldn't have thought of writing anything down. And I remember waking up and seeing the eyes in the curtains. There were silver grey curtains in my room, made of fiberglass. Now then, believe it or not, fiberglass curtains. Some people will remember them. They were cheap, they were cheerful, the fiberglass, and they were silver grey. And I could see 4 sets of eyes in curtains, and I were looking at these eyes, and all I could think was, because there were cows in field at back, they looked as big as cows' eyes. I'm looking at these black eyes, and I can see vague outline of something. I don't know what I'm looking at, really. And then they came out at curtain and went back in, and they came out and went back in. Curtains weren't moving. That's the impression. It was almost chameleon-like. And then they stood either side at bed. And then I know I can't move, and then I'm screaming, and I'm not making a sound. And that kind of those little cameos of events, Nath, went on from whatever age I was, so 4 or 5, till I were about 13, 14. And I'd like to say, there's some the imagination's overactive imagination, but I'm 60 years old now. I can remember it like it were yesterday. And it's kind of stopped when I was 13 or 14 years old, and then there were a massive gap. And when I moved to Bridlington, to this property I'm in 1993, and it started again instantly. So our lives sort of mapped out and pre-planned for us? Was it by design that I moved into this property? Was it by design that this property, the people who'd owned it previously, who'd been in it a lot of years, elderly couple, had been spiritualists and practicing strange things, because we'd only been in it a couple of weeks when Britain's exorcist for the Vatican, Reverend Tom Willis, people Google him, is there, you'll find him, came to bless the house. He'd not been asked. So new people have moved in. I've been told I'd like to bless the house. I've done it before, advising us not to sleep in certain rooms. Yeah, but we've not experienced anything sort of ghosty, or as you would say. Do you know what I mean? But I'm just saying, it's everything by design, because it started right away. Literally right away. And you could say, well, you're imagining all this. Well, if I'm imagining it, when I spoke to Whitley Strieber back in, I spoke to him in 2006, I think it was. He wanted me to go on Dreamland, and I just didn't feel confident enough to talk about these things. But when I spoke to him in 2014, he says, get your medical records. Says, they might paint a picture, and they certainly do. And I've got all the medical records, and I've put some of them in Night People, where the doctors are saying we are perplexed by the punch hole lesions that keep appearing on this man's body every 3 to 6 months. Well, I knew what were doing it. I I actually knew what were doing it. And, you know, I'd got their medical terminology, and I ain't got it in front of me to read, so I don't want to sound like some expert because I don't really understand it enough. But, you know, they were healing with giant foreign body cells, which implied that a surgical procedure had taken place. You know, you know, when we talked about it, I mean, I don't know if you'll know Whitley Strieber is, won't you?
Yeah.
He said he didn't think he didn't know of anybody anywhere in the world who'd been interfered with by the visitors as much as Paul Sinclair.
Wow.
And it doesn't sound good, that, does it? But no, but it's crazy. I don't know. So yeah, in answer to your question, my own. The only truth I can ever believe in is my own.
Yeah.
You know, I can place faith in what people are telling me, and you like to think you're a good judge of character. Some fabulous witnesses for Wolflands, absolutely fabulous. But really, at the end of the day, the only truth any of us can truly believe in is our own.
Yeah.
You know, and if you can look into yourself and think, you know, I'm doing my best to try and put these experiences out. That's all we can do.
Yeah.
So
I think too many people as well, that, like you touched on, then the best experiences you can have are your own. The best evidence you can ever have is your own. But I think too many people put too much emphasis on trying to prove that to other people, and you'll never prove anything to everybody because everyone's got their own opinions, everyone's got their own skepticisms. But like you said, like you touched on, then if you can prove it to yourself that you're like, look, I know what I saw or what I experienced. I know that I'm not crazy and I wasn't imagining things. I know that what happened actually happened. That's all the proof that you'll ever need.
It is, but I'm as guilty of what you've just said as anybody else. I go on those cliff tops, you know, not just for myself. I talk about. I've got these witnesses coming forward telling me things. The full spectrum of witnesses for all aspects of what we're dealing with, and I want to get some proof for them to validate what they're telling me. And in turn, I'm telling people on podcasts like this.
Yeah.
So that's why I go quite a lot. It's not just for myself, you know, because I know what I've seen, and I know the existence of these things. You know, back in 1997, I think might have been November 1997, and I went to bed this particular evening, and I don't mean I know pattern. Night People's a collection of events. There's no beginning, middle, and an end. They're just fragments of what I remember. I can't remember a full story, Nath. But I remember waking up and seeing lights turning on inside that bedroom wall, and I knew kind of, but I can't move, I can't do anything. And then you'd see one, then you'd see another, and then there'd be by either side of bed, which couldn't have been because my wife were at side of me. So are you somewhere else? Or there's like mind games. Then the pain in my back was excruciating. The pain in my back. I think I must have passed out, but they were talking to me, but I didn't hear it in the word. It like some audible words in my ear, and I didn't hear it as words in my head. But I knew they were saying, "Don't panic," or words to that effect. It's a bed spring turning in your back, which it couldn't have been. And they're telling me this, and the pain, it just felt somebody were turning a corkscrew in my back, and I must have passed out. And I woke up the next morning, and luckily, this is the only time one of the only times we got photographs. And I sat on edge of bed, and Mary says to me, she says, "Paul, I don't believe it." I said, "What?" She said, "You've got 3 holes in your back." These were holes. And as soon as she'd said that, I remembered what I've put in Night People. Not remembered anymore. I've only remembered in a nutshell, what I've just told you. The doctor's the same day. My wife, you know, the cheap cameras, you just take a picture and it said fire a picture out.
Yeah.
She took a picture of my back. So we've got that in Night People. But the same day I went to the doctor's. This is why Whitley said, you know, you might find something interesting in your medical notes. The doctor's done a drawing of them. And it just looks like what's on my back. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't mean that I've been sort of touched by some being from another world. It could be that, I don't know, I've stood up in bedroom and my wife wants to shove a poker in my back. Do you know what I'm saying? Is you can't convince everybody of everything. And like you've just said, if you're comfortable in your own truth, and I know what happened, but it still don't make it any easier when you relay this story and somebody comes in the chat or speaks to you afterwards and says, yeah, I think you imagined it, or are you sure you didn't fall and catch your back on something? It's I don't mean it's hard to deal with now, but before it would make me angry. It don't really bother me now because you've just got to roll with these things.
Yeah, I think that's my bugbear with skeptics is they like to cherry pick the bits that they can say, oh, it was probably this. They ignore 90% of the evidence of what they can't explain. So they just explain the 10% that could have an explanation and be like, there you go, I explained it. Like, not really though, because you all this stuff you've just put over here is still fact. Like, we still have to deal with that. But it's just infuriating trying to deal with it.
It is, it's difficult. And I mean, jumping back to the wallabies and the professor at Warwick University, who I've no axe to grind with because he were really helpful. But his thoughts were, because he's purely grounded in science and he's got this is perhaps some kind of internet sensation where craze, is that the word? Yeah. And I found that probably more ridiculous than the fact that some otherworldly intelligence is doing this for whatever reasons we're never going to know. But there you go.
There's not.
Outer Limits magazine says, "Have to go, really, and well done." Cheers, Chris. Thanks for coming in and having a look.
But so it bugs me that these people, especially, are the ones that claim to be more intelligent than the people that are, investigating these things and believing what witnesses have seen or believing, more evidence of the actual case or sighting. They're like, oh no, it must have been an internet craze because that seems more likely. It only seems more likely if you ignore, like you said, the fact that how many teenagers on the internet are going to go break into a zoo without leaving any evidence that they broke into the zoo. There's no damage to the zoo.
Then catch one of these things,
slice its head off with maybe a samurai sword or something very precise, which having to try and pin one of these things down, it's going to be moving. You're not going to get a perfect cut.
And then do it. Move across the country and let's do it all around the UK. Then we'll go to Coffs Coast, we'll go to Emerald Coast, we'll go to the amount of places that this we'll call it this phenomena hit on in New South Wales and that coastline. What incredible! I mean, I never expected to find it there. Do you know what I mean? I didn't expect it to be the research, if that's what we want to call it, to travel much further than East Yorkshire. Then I found out that it were happening all around UK. It's absolutely fascinating, and you just don't expect to see these things. I mean, it's the same as 2017. Multi-phenomena events taking place throughout 2017, but I got involved at a farm in East Yorkshire because I found out that it had a number of sheep killed, and when I'd finished in 2019, when it finished, whatever it was that were doing it, he'd lost 50 sheep, and I think he'd lost about 27. Maybe I can't remember the exact number when I first got involved in it, and I think it was New Year's Day 2017 that I first became aware of it, because there were a vagrant who lived in Danes Dyke, and we always took him food. Lovely guy, Peter, really, really nice guy. Didn't ask anything of anybody, but everybody liked Pete, and he'd lived there for 13 years. So New Year's Day, we took him some food, and he told me that police had been to see him, and they wanted to know if he'd seen a particularly unusual dog or any strange animal. And he asked them, because he's better placed than anybody. He's in a remote place and he's living in this dike. He's not living in the dike itself, but that's what they call it. So he asked why, and he said because 10 sheep had been killed at a farm. So I just did a bit of digging, found farmer, explained I'd like to help him look into it, and I've got time on my hands, and I wanted to go before first light, and I'd do it 4 or 5 days a week, and that's what I did. I did it for like 18 months in darkness, so to squash the people, the other farmers who were saying, oh, it's crows that's took eyes, and it's badgers that are doing this, and it's foxes that are doing this, because everybody had an earthly explanation.
Yeah.
But whatever were doing that to those animals, it were nothing I could pinpoint. I mean, people were saying it was a satanic cult. It were a farm in the middle of nowhere. You had to drive a mile across private land to get to farm. If you went along clifftop route, you'd have to walk 2 miles. To do what? To strip the facial skin off a sheep, remove its front left leg, and take its eyes and ears
in the dark.
In the dark, and and I were finding these animals, and I don't know what time we've got at the moment, Nath, but the turning point for me, the strange one for me, was, and I haven't got the date, but every sheep was sprayed. We'll call it number 37. This sheep.
Yeah.
He told me that he'd lost one of his lambs, because most of them were full-grown ewes that were getting killed. Lambs were being left. So, and it weren't crows that were taking eyes. I would find them in night, and I could lift the heads up, and I had gone at the other side. Right, I must sound ever so macabre, people here today. I realise that, but the turning point for me, what the farmer said to me when I rang him, I said, I'm off up there, whatever day, we'll call it Sunday. He says, I lost a lamb on Wednesday. It's all right, yeah. And it's to be about the size of a Labrador. They're not a tiny one, it's half grown. Call it number 37, I don't know. And he told me this. I said, okay, fair enough. He says, so if you get into them woods afterwards and you find it, let me know, or tell me, and I'll get a tap and we'll remove it, because that's what I used to help him with that. So anyway, there's this grid of the field. There's nothing on it. The grass is about, I don't know, 10 to 12 inch high, full of sheep, but nothing untoward. Drops into the wood, do my little search of the wood, come out of the wood, come back onto the field, just shut the gate behind me before I go on to the next field and look up the field, and there's a sheep laid there. It weren't there when I went, like an hour and a half, 2 hours before. Yeah. So I looked. I even knew it were going to be that sheep. It were number 37. I can't remember the name, people. So, you know what I mean? But that's... Yeah. Went up to it. It had been missing about 4 days. It didn't smell. It were clap cold. Eyes had gone. Ears had gone. Front left leg for some reason. And I rang him up. And I told him, I said, well, he's here. And he'd been round field. He'd got 2 dogs and he'd got a 4x4 car. He'd been looking. I said, I found it. He said, well, you can't have done. I said, it's here. He said, oh, Fox must have brought it back. You see, he's looking for this earthly explanation. I thought, oh, yeah, that's what they do. But, you know, I have full respect for the farmer, to be honest with you. You're a lovely guy, or is a lovely guy. So, yeah, that was a strange one. That was sort of one of them really is the phenomena playing with you kind of moments, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot of researchers that just look into animal mutilations, and it's a really, really interesting topic, because there's obviously different theories of is it the other beings doing what we would do if we went to a new planet and we found other animals and we were just taking samples and testing it and you know, abducting things, taking it, doing tests, putting a tag in it or something, sending it back. There's obviously theories that it's all us, some secret group or something somewhere is doing all this stuff. Like, I don't know anywhere near enough about animal mutilation.
No, well,
I haven't really looked into it much. I know that it's a big thing, but
it's a massive thing, and it's macabre. And you know, during that period of time, there were ram pickups up on the cliff tops. And they were placed in different areas around East Yorkshire with a great big cab on the back of them, with people went in full of electronic gear with a big dish on the top, military, with triangular signs on saying hazard, radiation and things. And they were just parked not far from where this were happening. It makes you wonder if they were aware of it. Do you know, it's a strange one. The police were involved. I mean, you know, if anybody's listening to this and thinks, well, all them sheep, surely police were involved. Yeah, police were involved. Yeah. Police were involved and went with night vision equipment and staked the area out and left on one of the mornings, and there were one done in the field that they'd never seen. You know, the same field we were and the woodland around it. One of the other farmers, because he used to come on a morning, and sometimes he'd bring us a coffee as I'm walking back, and say, and he's got some decking, and there were corn growing in field at side at decking, and nothing else for miles. Said I heard voices other night while I'm sat on my decking in early evening, not dark. I says, what do you mean? So I'm just sat there relaxing. He says, and I can hear voices talking. He says, I said, where? He said, there. And he pointed, he says, about 30 foot into corn.
Wow.
Nobody there. No tracks in corn, nothing. One morning I went not into the corn, into the wood after I'd been in the fields. And I heard it were like electronic voices. It almost, and hey, let's be fair, people. It could have been a walkie-talkie. It was almost radio type voice. And there's a lot of bracken, and bracken were at its full height. And there's me and my little dog, Wolfie, who once hurt a rabbit, and we're walking through it, and I heard it. And I thought, what do I do here? Because I don't like cutting across fields. And one of the fields had what's called borage in it, the purple flower. I think they use it for health foods, starflower oil or things. And I was tempted to go through the field. I'll be honest with you, because it unnerved me because it were close. Whatever it were close. Whether it's a man in a ghillie suit observing, you don't know who else is watching this, do you? So it's just the military were about. So not everything is unexplained, as in the woo. There's unexplained stuff done by men or women. Let's not stigmatize just men. But it's a strange one. And
I think that it's a big part of everything. Like you said, it's unexplained. Even if, not that my personal opinions swing that way, but if we were to actually get legitimate evidence from people that were, trusted sources that said all UFOs have always been man, none of it is from somewhere else, and it was a source that I could trust, so not the US government. If it was someone that legitimately said, right, we can prove 100% legitimately it's just man, I'd still be happy with that, because there's an answer.
How would that work, though? I know this is hypothetical, Nath, but how would that work? Because how far would you go back? And if you went back into the annals of time, decade after decade, how would that stand up to some of the things people have seen 50 years ago, 100 years ago? Like, I don't. I know you're saying you'd go with it wouldn't. Whilst working on Wolflands, myself and Les Drake, I got looking in an archive in East Yorkshire, and I found an article by a guy called Howard Brearley. And 121 years ago, Howard Brearley. I mean, you can look the name up, people. I think he must have been a prolific writer around the area in the time. And he wrote about the Barguest of East Ayton. And when you look at what the Barguest was, it was bar, meaning bear, but it was supposed to be a huge hound with glowing red eyes, self-luminous eyes, that haunted the forests and moors around East Ayton. Now, East Ayton, I know people, I'm throwing these words out and people don't know where it is, but 3 of our witnesses from Wolflands saw what they claimed to be something akin to a werewolf 3 miles away from East Ayton in Broxer Forest. And when you look into folklore and look into different cultures, a Broxer was a shape-shifting demon. So we're in and I love to tie these little things in. It doesn't mean that that's why they saw it, but it's fabulous that these, we've got this unusual name for a forest in North Yorkshire, Broxer Forest. And then in some cultures, the Broxer is a shape-shifting demon. And then just where, about 3/4 of a mile from where they claim to have seen this creature, you've got these other connotations. You've got Howell Moor and you've got Moor Rig, and the Moor spelled M-A-W, as in the gaping jaws, are often associated with Fenrir, the Viking hound that brought about the end of the world in the Viking Ragnarok. I find it all fabulous, and it paints a wonderful picture that adds a little bit more meat to the bone of what some people say. It doesn't have the proof, but it just makes things a little bit more interesting to just go that extra mile and find these things.
But again, just slightly kind of an argument to that. Not that I generally believe that these
it's all good. Let's
generally believe that these things are at least some of them have to be coming from somewhere else.
Yeah.
But the thing we touched on earlier that maybe with the way, if our understanding of time was wrong and the different dimensions, that these things could still be, even 4,000 years ago, some cavemen could have seen a UFO, that could still have been manned spacecraft.
Yeah.
In 2,000 years in the future from now, they could have been seeing aeroplanes, fighter pilots flying around, and they've gone, "What the hell's that?" It's a UFO because it can do things that we shouldn't be able to do. So it could still be us, but there's the way that we understand the universe working at the moment wouldn't explain that. So there'd still have to be new science for that to be physically possible.
I'm glad you've said that about, and I agree with what you've said. By the way, I don't see why your argument is any less valid than what I've just said. But I'm glad you've just said that, new science, because although I'm not scientifically trained, and so I'd never try and educate anybody in science, but who's to say that these advanced intelligences, even if it's us from the future, have not struck upon some new science, something that we would never have thought possible, because so many people are so keen to say this is the law of everything throughout the universe, and this is how it must work. But what if it doesn't? I mean, look at all new discoveries that we're making all of the time. Things that we previously said were impossible are now possible. You know, I don't know. All I've done is knock nails in wood, people. So I'm not going to profess to be a scientist, am I?
But yeah, another thing that I will show, one of my favourite things that's kind of, to me, is evidence of a UFO hundreds of years ago. This one baffles me every time I see it. Let me see if I can get it to load. I think that it's a painting. I'm pretty certain the painting's called the Madonna.
I see it there. Yeah, I've seen the painting before.
So you got that thing there, obviously.
And then
lovely
behind
painting.
her neck.
Just upload the zoomed in version of that strange thing up in the corner.
Yeah.
What the hell's that if it's not a UFO?
I would agree. And it also, I mean, the painting, I don't know who did the painting. It was something like Da Vinci, I don't know. But were these people touched by some kind of brilliance to produce these incredible works of art? And do you find that the depiction of halos around people quite fascinating? You know, almost celestial being type depictions. I don't know.
Almost like an aura that
Yeah.
people claim to be able to see around people.
Well, yeah, some people do. I mean, I can't see it like that, but I know people claim to.
Yeah, it's
So,
very strange. So
give us another question.
I'm going to do two quick questions.
Okay.
One, I'm assuming is going to have a very short answer because I think we sort of touched on it at the beginning. But I know you said you don't want to be. You even used the wording that I'd written down in my question. If you had to be pigeonholed into one area of the paranormal, be it UFOs, cryptids, the spooky, ghosty type kind of paranormal, to investigate for the rest of your career, and you couldn't investigate anything else, what would you pick?
God, what a tough question. I don't think I could go down that road, but I really don't, because whatever's interacted with me throughout my life will follow me throughout my life. I mean, it might have done now with Paul Sinclair. You know what I mean? Because, but so I probably wouldn't pick that. Plus, whatever happened in childhood were terrifying. I think I'd probably go down the route of these cryptids, to be honest with you, because it's fascinating. It's fascinating and it's edgy, and I like the edginess of things. You know, well, that answers it.
Cryptozoology is really interesting to me, especially considering the fact that it seems to be the one that gets mocked the most out of the ghosts, the cryptids and UFOs. Everyone's seen a light in the sky. Everyone kind of has their theory on ghosts. You say you've seen a strange animal, everyone goes, "That's nonsense." Instantly shuts it down.
You just instantly you're thrown to the horror films, and people will say, "Well, silver bullets, and what about the full moon? And is that what it all works around?" That's just for movies. There's something happening here, you know, and you know the folklore follows it back through time as well. It's a difficult one, that, Nath, and I'd still probably say I'd always stick to the multi-phenomena. I know, so that doesn't answer your question really, but there you go.
You just say no. I'll just wash my hands of all of it. It's either all of it or none of it.
Yeah, good point. I've just dropped my pen, so let me just pick that up.
So I got one last question, and it's kind of a general. What's next for Paul Sinclair? I know you're speaking. He's speaking again at the Awakening Expo this August.
Yeah, I'm speaking at the Awakening, and I'll be talking about the night people. So it's the first time I've ever spoken in public. I know I've done that tonight here, but ever in front of anybody. And we've finished Wolflands. We're waiting for music, to be honest with you. So Wolflands is finished. We've no more filming to do. I will be doing another project with Les. We kind of haven't settled on it yet, and I'm starting some projects with Chris Turner. And you know, we're sort of lining all these cards up, and we'll be moving forward. I've enough information for another book, but I won't be doing another book. I've plenty of time to do that. When, like I said earlier, I think we've all just got a certain amount of shelf life, and I'm not going to be walking around these forests, moors, and everything when I'm in my 70s, and I'm 60 now. So I want to pile as much of this in as I can. Yeah. So just
plenty of time to sit behind a desk and type up a book
without a doubt.
Don't work anymore.
Yeah.
Well, that's generally what I said. I've got a project I'm working on. I started writing a book about 4 years ago. I've got ridiculous ADHD, so my brain went, "Oh, look, something sparkly," and I wandered off and never got around to finishing it. So I found it recently. I was like, "Oh, I should probably sit down." So I've been working on my book.
Very good.
If at any point I actually finish it, that remains to be seen. So I'm kind of constantly trying to kick myself up the arse and be like, no, sit down and do some writing.
You will do.
So because I'm forever wandering off and doing new things. So I'm on the other way around. I'm like, no, I need to find time to sit down and do nothing and just write. Because I'm forever out doing other things. It's
difficult, isn't it? And there'll be a time and a place for it, and you will do it, and without a doubt. And if we've got a minute, can I just say that if anybody wants to look on the website, it's truthproof.uk. Loads of unique UFO reports on the website. You know that have come to us, and Don Lodge helps me run the website. He puts all the information on, and we obviously have our own live stream every Thursday, 7 p.m, the Truth Proof live stream. And anybody that's got any reports that they want to share with me, contact me via my email. So that would be Paul Sinclair and then 3 letters ILF@gmail.com. And it's all lowercase. And been a pleasure. I don't know whether we've done, and I'm saying that.
Yeah. I think I needed to cut it a bit short. We'd normally have another half an hour, but again, time flies when you're having fun.
Excellent. Okay, my friend.
I think, like I said, I've still got a long list of questions. I'm always left with a long list of questions when we've got decent guests on. So at some point, when you're not standing out on a cliff top at 4 o'clock in the morning, we'll have to get you back on again.
Yeah, I'd love to. Just give me a shout, Nath, and we'll do it.
We'll do.
Thank you.
And I apologise to people who put questions in the comments because we didn't get round to 90% of them. But again, like I said, I had to cut the show short this week. I'll stick the video on Facebook for anyone that didn't get to see it. Annoyingly, I know what the bloody hell's going wrong with Facebook the last few weeks. And I think my next show is in April. I don't think we've got anyone booked in for the next couple of weeks. So next show's in April, and I'll put details of that up if and when I know all the actual details. So thanks again to Paul for joining us, and a very, very interesting chat. And I'm now going to be terrified looking at the curtains in the middle of the night in case I see eyes staring back at me. And we'll see you all soon.
Thank you.
See ya.